For young couples, if you guys are dating, do not spend 24 hours with each other. And that doesn't just mean in person, but like don't spend all day texting each other and all day on Snapchat and all day on Instagram because you're gonna burn out.
A man and woman become one and leave their father and mother. As hard as it might sound and feel in that moment, your mom and dad are still on this earth. They're still supporting you, but you have to be able, I think that's a big thing, you have to be able to trust your husband.
And that's advice that I give to anybody that's dating. Do not compare yourself to other couples. Anyone that's in ministry, do not compare yourself to someone else that's in ministry or someone else's ministry or anything like that. Comparison kills, right? That's a common phrase. Comparison kills. Hey, what's going on, guys? Pastor Abe here, and I'm with
Pastor Leah.
Awesome. And look, I know this isn't our normal set, right? For our other episodes, we've been in a different set, but today we are in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta. We're on kind of vacation a little bit. The reason that we came out here is my cousin's getting married by Mexico City, Ciudad de Mexico. But we wanted to come out just a couple days earlier before the whole family out to Puerto Vallarta and just spend some time, here together.
It's so beautiful here.
It is. And look, we're fighting because we're, remote. We're fighting against the sun. So if we get darker as the episode, happens, it's because we're fighting against the sun. But I'm glad that we were still able to get, the gear here because I wanted to talk about the main reason why we decided even to come out on this trip. Look, there's a verse, and I want to share it with you, okay? It's 2 Timothy 1:6. Now, yesterday, actually, before I get into this, we kind of talked a little bit about this with our relationships Vine group that we're having. This semester at Vine Church, we're having a Vine group specifically on relationships. And we talked about the importance of keeping the flame alive.
Yeah.
Okay, that phrase, we see this imagery, not just in the Bible, but throughout history of like the flame, right, in a relationship, the butterflies, the first love, right? Those are many other terms for it. But, what can we do to keep that alive if it ever feels like, maybe kind of it's going out or it's going down? And I want to read 2 Timothy 1:6. This is the Apostle Paul talking to Timothy. He is a young minister, and he's encouraging him. And look at what he says to him. I'm going to read it with the NIV version, but if you want to follow at home, you can do it in King James, whatever you feel comfortable with. But NIV says this: "For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying of my hands." Okay, now here obviously Paul isn't talking about anything romantic. Here Paul's talking about, fan the flame of the gift of God. So like, the gift of the Holy Spirit that's been placed, on Timothy by Paul. Even though he's anointed, even though he's called, ministry's tough. And as ministry goes on, sometimes what can happen is we grow weary, we grow tired. In the book of Revelation, the author is speaking to a church. Well, God is through the author to a specific church. And that church was doing everything right. He says, you've identified the false prophets and teachers, and you don't interact with them. He says you give, you're cheerful, you do everything right. Yeah. But one thing I have against you, that you've lost your first love, right? And so I want to talk about a little bit about that, because that's kind of the reason that we decided we're going to come on this trip. Isn't because we're losing our love, but because we do things. Or we try to do things continually to keep that flame, going, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important that we take time together, Now, a lot of times people will ask us, like, how do you guys get time at all to be with each other because of your work? Tell them a little bit about your schedule.
Yeah. I work full time throughout the week as an accountant. Then I just finished school.
Yeah, you were a full-time student before.
Yeah, I think we also mentioned that 2 episodes ago. So that's off the list. But then I started studying for a CPA because you can't get bored, right? So there's a lot of things. And on top of that, we do ministry full time.
And your dog mom.
Oh, yeah, that too, our little puppies. But I think they give me more back than I have to give them. And it's a wonderful life. I love it. But yes, sometimes it's a little hard to find time for each other.
100%.
Not really to make time, because that's something, if you really want to make time for each other, then you'll find a way. And we do really well with that.
Yeah.
But yes, it's sometimes
difficult.
a challenge.
And so you're like, I know you wake up early. What time do you wake up normally?
5:30.
5:30. Yeah, that's way too early for me. I do not wake up at that time. But what I find is you wake up super early, and you go straight to the gym. You then come back. You're already on your computer doing emails and stuff. Then you're at the office on some days. Sometimes you get to work from home, but you're kind of at the office. And then at night you're studying again for the CPA thing. And then on most nights we have something to do with church, right? So either we lead a Vine group, or we have our core meetings, or we have a service or something, right? So that's your schedule. For mine, kind of the same as yours. From the moment I wake up, I'm working until the moment that, even past the sun goes down. I get a lot of work done actually at night. I stay up late still working. I have my own business. And then on top of that, I pastor full time too, right? And so a lot of times people will ask, how do you guys even find time or make time or whatever you want to call that? And we have, we have gone through different seasons. Tell them a little bit about when we were dating, what that looked like as to now when we're married. Because there's a big difference between when you're dating and when you're married. And that's something that, we talked about when we got married, in the first year.
Something I had to learn.
That's right. Yeah. My wife was kind of like, why isn't everything exactly like when we were dating? And I was like, well, because we're married. it's in a different season. But, not specifically, we can get into that, but I want to more so just hear from your perspective, what was it like when we were dating as opposed to now? Like what has changed? Like what would have been different when we were dating, time-wise, spending time with each other? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when we were dating, we did see each other more on a get-to-know basis for sure, right? When we went out to the dinner, to a restaurant, we still got to know each other. And you don't get to know a person within like 3 months, right? That's why they're dating for that. So we took our time getting to know each other, falling more and more in love with each other. But we also made sure to not spend every day, every second with one another. Because that can come to issues when you're still dating. You can probably elaborate on that.
Yeah. That is something that I love that. And I recommend it to young couples all the time when I talk to them. I'm like, look, for young couples, if you guys are dating, do not spend 24 hours with each other. And that doesn't just mean in person, but like don't spend all day texting each other and all day on Snapchat and all day on Instagram because you're gonna burn out. Why? Why do I say that? Well, because you're not married, right? There's specific things when you're married that, help to cultivate that intimacy. But when you're not married and you're trying to, do things right before God, it's pretty hard to like do that. And then, at the same time spend all day, every day with each other. It's not healthy. You're also, you don't live together yet. You guys shouldn't be, like, as I mentioned before in another episode, you shouldn't be, as a man, providing for her yet. You're not married. She shouldn't be, providing for you or cooking for you or anything like that because you're not married. Enjoy your season that you're in of dating, right? So that's, kind of what I always tell young people is don't rush in and pretend like you're married. Don't check up on each other. Like, where are you? Why doesn't your location say that you're at home? You guys aren't married. You guys are dating. And it's important to enjoy those specific seasons, right? But definitely, I think that, from what you said, when we were dating, it was more of like, we would go on a lot of dates, obviously, because we didn't live with each other. So we would go on a lot of dates, not like a lot throughout the week, but just in the time that we dated, we went out on a lot of dates. And when we went out on dates, we would go normally not just to eat, but we would go somewhere. We'd go to like to San Francisco, or we would go to like Half Moon Bay, or just like somewhere, right? We'd like Santa Cruz is where I asked you to be my girlfriend. I remember on the beach. And so we would go out, to different places. Now that we're married, we don't go out to so many places all the time. Unless I'm preaching and they invite us to go out somewhere, right? But we're not always out like at different places. Now, there was an issue at the beginning of when we got married, and that issue was kind of that you felt like things weren't the same anymore, right? Just share on that a little bit.
Yeah. So once we got married, of course, things settle down. You're trying to build your life. You're trying to make some money. You have to go to work. You don't probably study anymore. I'm not sure about you, but maybe you are still in college and school right now.
I was in my last semester.
But you were also already working, right? But nevertheless, once you move in together, there are different things, other responsibilities that come up. So we did not live the dating life anymore, obviously. And I did not like that in the beginning. I assumed that everything's going to stay the same. We are still going to go on like 4 dates a week. But reality is, when you are as busy as the both of us have become, it's not very realistic to even have dinner every night together. It is still very important that you take time for one another throughout the week and make that clear to your partner. If you are not on the same wavelength as we were in the beginning. Hey, baby, this is the season we are going through right now, and this doesn't mean that I love you any less or that I don't care for you anymore. This just means that I am providing for us, and we need to make time for each other in a different way. And also, I think what I did in the beginning is I compared the time we have for one another with other relationships, which is
huge.
a disaster.
Oh my God. Yeah, 100%. I think that one is so good. Like, do not compare yourself to other couples. That's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing. That's advice that I give to anybody that's dating. Do not compare yourself to other couples. Anyone that's in ministry, do not compare yourself to someone else that's in ministry or someone else's ministry or anything like that. Comparison kills, right? That's a common phrase. Comparison kills. And it's so true. It's so true. If you aren't careful, it can kill you. Now, there's a difference between if you both go, hey, you know what? We both notice something, that maybe we like about a couple that we look up to. Why don't we try to implement that?
Amen.
That's one thing. A completely different thing for me would be for me to say to you, look at the way that she treats, him. Like, why don't you treat me like that, right? Or maybe I don't even say that, but I think that is very dangerous. Comparison can kill you. It can destroy a marriage, a ministry, a business if you compare yourself, right? But something that I told you during that time was, look, there's a season for everything, and we are not now dating anymore. We are now married. And so this season's going to look different. And it's going to change again when we have kids. Yeah. And it will change again when our kids aren't babies, but now they're teenagers. And then it'll change again when, they get married and we're grandparents. And so life is seasonal. Like, it's different seasons, right? And if you are so stuck on what happened in a previous season, you will never see what God has for you in this season of your life. Good. So you have to be able to adapt and morph and understand things are going to change, but that's okay. Now, kind of on that, there was a verse that I heard, in a session one time. I remember years ago was the first time that I heard it, and it was specifically it was in a seminar or a conference, to pastors, and it was talking about seasons of life and in your ministry, and that's kind of like the way that it was used. I was a kid when I remember the first time that I heard this verse, and then I've read it many times. And I had gone to that conference with my dad. I remember he took me, and I was there. But I want to share just this passage. It's in Ecclesiastes 3, okay? And then listen to what it says. It says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search, a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear, a time to mend. A time to be silent, a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace."
Wow.
Okay. This is I think a very powerful passage that a lot of times is overlooked. But in relationships, there is a time for everything.
Yeah.
There is a time when you're first dating to go out on as many dates as possible and do the dating thing. And there's a time for that.
Yes.
When you're married, you just said something important. Well, we got to work. We got to build something now. Now we're together. We have left our mother and father. We have become one. Yeah. We have to build something. So that ought to look different and feel different. And that's okay, right? It's okay to be different and to experience that, different season. And so what can happen is if you get too stuck on what a previous season looked like, you can feel like, oh, my marriage is actually going down or my relationship's going down. Yeah. When instead you should be thinking, no, my season has changed. Yeah. Us as a couple, we've changed. We're constantly changing. I'm not the same as when we first met each other. Yeah. Neither are you. We're completely different. And that's a good thing. Like, we should be getting better, right? We should hopefully be changing for the better. But seasons will change. If you used to not work and then you get married and now you have to work, well, you won't have as much time as before. And that's fine. I think as long as that conversation is had. But however, I in our relationships Vine group yesterday, I shared something that I had written down, and that's that exhaustion and routine are the biggest enemies of intimacy. Wow. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about intimacy specifically, like just sexually. I just mean like, an intimate relationship, like that closeness between one another. And that's even true between our relationship, not just with each other, but our relationship with God. Exhaustion and routine are the biggest enemies of intimacy with our partner, with God, with whoever. Like, those two things will kill you. Now, we have very busy lives, as we mentioned, but we try to still make time for each other. Tell them what was our compromise, after our conversation when we first got married about things being different now. What was my compromise? I said, okay, you know what? I understand. I obviously can't give you the same amount of time as I did when I was dating, because I'm finishing up school. I'm also working. You're working now, and you were working overnights. I don't know if you remember, but our whole first year of marriage was crazy. I would work all during the day, and she would work all during the night. She worked as a receptionist, right, at a hotel, and so she worked all nights, and I worked all day. So
I still complained about not having time for each other. I don't know why.
That's true. And our first year of marriage, we didn't really see each other. Yeah. We didn't really see each other. But anyway, we talked about, that you had brought up, like we don't see each other as much. And what was the compromise? What did I tell you?
We scheduled. Sometimes you need that in a relationship. Yeah. We scheduled to have Friday nights be our date night.
Come on.
Whatever happens, whatever's going on throughout the week, whatever invitation we receive.
Yeah.
No, Friday nights are our date nights. And sometimes, of course, things come up, but then we first talk to each other, one another, if that's a compromise, maybe something that we will use as our date night or... but yeah, normally it's Friday nights or date nights.
Yeah.
They also changed throughout the years. In the beginning, we were super outgoing. We wanted to experience things together, go to restaurants, go do things. Now we love our movie nights.
Yeah, that's true.
So we've become very easy to get happy with our relationship.
Yeah. And I think that for me it was like, okay, I can't go out on dates all the time, but I can definitely, it's in my power to still do at least one date a week, right? And I think that's an important thing for guys out there and for the ladies too. For guys, don't stop dating your wife, right? And for the gals, don't stop dating your husband. Yesterday, we were talking about the concept of not losing the flame in our Vine group. And I was saying, remember the things that you did at the beginning and do those things again, right? Do those exact same things again. And so I think that one thing that is very important to do is to talk first and foremost, but also to pick a time, pick a day where you continually do dates, right? Like it's an ongoing thing. That's what's worked for us. And I would recommend that to anybody that's, feeling that way, that's like, things have changed. Like, I don't know, it feels different now, right? Talk about it and pick a time, pick a day, and it's okay. It's okay that it's scheduled, but at least you still go out and do something. For us, it was Friday nights, right? We were pretty much religious about this. Like we said, no matter what.
Are.
Yeah, we still are. We said no matter what happens, we will always do something together on Friday. We'll go out to eat, we'll watch movies, whatever, but it's our time. Even if we had something that came up on Friday, and we have to do it late, like at midnight, we still watch a movie at midnight, right? And we're like, no, we're investing time into our relationship, right? And so for us, that's something that has worked. I think that something I tell people a lot too is almost everything can be solved everything can be solved in a relationship. If, I said almost, and I'm going to stay on that because obviously things like abuse, right? That's not something that you want to stay in something like that. And that's a different kind of situation, right? But for most of us that, are not struggling with that specific thing in our relationship, I think everything can be solved as long as both people want to solve something.
That's so good.
And so if you're feeling like, hey, you know what, my partner, is just neglecting me, okay, talk to them.
Yeah.
And if they love you, they should want to do something about it.
Yes.
Right? It might not be in their possibility to do it exactly how you want it done, but they should be able to do something about it, right? And so when I hear my wife tell me, now that we're married, year one, tell me, I feel a little neglected. I feel like we used to go out on so many dates. I'm not just going to be like, well, that sucks for you. Like, I'm not, like, because I love you. So I'll say, okay, I didn't know you felt that way, or maybe I did. I didn't at the time. I understood we're in a different season. It's go time, right? And so I told you, okay, I understand where you're coming from. We can't go out as much as we did when we were dating right now, because it's just not possible. I mean, as you mentioned, you were working overnights, I was working all day, so it wasn't even possible. But we can do something about it. We can try to do something, fix something, right? And we came to that agreement. Let's do just Friday nights, right? Something that has been important for us, and that's the reason that we came on this trip too, is to, your parents live where?
Germany.
Yes, in Germany. I know that, but maybe people watch and don't know that. When we are vacationing, we want to be there, right? Because we want you specifically want to spend time with them, and that makes sense. They live far away, and so you want to be able to see them. We frequently also go on trips with my parents too, right? And so we're, as a family is important to us, right? From both sides, it's important. But something that also isn't very important is that we spend time just each other, and we create memories just each other, right? And so like this trip, just to be here for a couple of days before we go to the family thing was to like, okay, you and I, let's spend time together first. Then we'll do whatever family thing we have to do or want to do or whatever that might be. But we spend time with each other, first.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people can also feel, and this is something that came up yesterday too, people can also feel like they're in competition with family members, right? Like women might feel like they're in competition with the man's mom, right? Like maybe if he's a mama's boy, he spends more time with his mom than he does his girl, right? And vice versa. Maybe the guy feels like, hey, you're spending way too much time with your dad. Like, I'm the man in your life now, not your dad anymore. What's going on? And even though that's not actually the case, sometimes you can feel that way, right? What would you say what advice would you give to somebody that maybe, feels that way? Or no, let me put it like this. Let's say you're talking to a girl and her boyfriend told her that. Her boyfriend said to her, hey, I feel neglected. You're spending more time with your family than me. Okay. Talk about it from a girlfriend's perspective and then from a wife's perspective. It's two completely different things, right? But talk a little bit about that. What would you tell her?
I think I would first of all ask her if she thinks anything changed over the last couple of months. Let's say in the beginning when they first started dating, that she spent less time with her parents and more time with him than right now. And if that's the case, then he probably has a reason to have that thought and feeling. And if that's the case, then I'd suggest to her to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Ask him if there's specific situations that made him feel that way, and either she has to accept how he feels and say, okay, I will spend less time with my parents. I want to move forward with you. They aren't married yet, is that correct?
If they're dating, no, they're not married yet. Yeah.
No, I forgot if you said
two scenarios. One, they're dating, one, they're married.
Okay, if they're dating, then I would ask her, do you really think this guy is serious? Do you really want to go forward with that guy? If that's the case, then maybe it's time for her to step away from her parents a little bit. But before doing that, and if she's not quite sure yet, I tell her, he probably has met your parents already, so why don't you invite him? Why don't you invite him?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Spend some time with mom.
Do things together, right? I think that's not, that's a great idea. Okay, well, before I say, what about for a wife? So her husband saying.
If the husband is complaining about the wife
spending too much time with the mom.
Yeah, but how do you define too much time?
Well, I don't know. He feels that way. Okay. What would you say?
If it's true, then she has to change
you see right
something.
there, she's for women. No, it's true. It's true.
If for him too much time means once a week, I might want to have a conversation.
Every day she's talking to her mom.
Yeah, okay. Then she also has to have a conversation with him and herself understand what it means to be in a marriage. Go back to the Bible, see what it says in there with that a man and woman become one and leave their father and mother. As hard as it might sound and feel in that moment, your mom and dad are still on this earth. They're still supporting you, but you have to be able, I think that's a big thing, you have to be able to trust your husband with taking care of you. You don't have to run to your mom or dad all the time. That's why you have your husband on.
You picked them, so he better be able to take care of you.
Yes, exactly. You have to trust him with your thoughts and your feelings, and don't go to your mom and bring her, or your dad and bring them into the relationship as the third wheel. Yeah,
bad
that's
idea.
Really important.
100%. I personally know people that have gotten married and then they live with their mom and dad.
Yeah,
that's rough, man. if that's you, glory to God, I'm praying for you, okay? But the reality is that almost never works because then you're getting opinions from, this is one of those cases where it's like more than two heads are not better, right? Like it's not better. Like, it should just be you and your wife, right?
Yes,
and don't get opinions from other people. I mean, it's not bad to hear them, but if that's always influencing, if you're married and you're like, hold on, let me check with my mom, see what she thinks about. No, you're married now, right? A danger can be though, because I have seen this recently actually, a danger can be when you aren't married yet, you're just dating, okay? And you're wanting your partner to leave their family already.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And it's like, no, you're just dating. True. You're not married yet. You guys shouldn't leave your mother and father yet. Wait until you get married to do that. That can complicate things a lot.
That's true.
And I love what you said. Just go to the Bible, right? Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day, it was a couple weeks ago actually, and they were like, Pastor Abe, like, I was going through this situation, and then I went into the Bible, and I realized the answer was there, and then I realized the Bible has an answer for every situation. And I was like, wow, well, at first I was like, wow, that's so cool. Yeah, exactly, right? At first I was like, that's, so cool that they had that realization.
Yeah.
And then like in my head, I'm like, well, yeah, man, like, it's almost like, if I listen to God's word and do what it says, things go good for me. Yeah, man, like that's what it's there for, right? The Bible is, it's like a study guide, right? It helps you through any exam that you're facing, any problem that you have, that study guide will help you.
So good.
And so, I definitely think there's many ways, there's different things for people in order to keep that flame alive. One is, I would recommend spend time with each other, right? Make sure, do things like this where you get away just one another. You don't have to fly to Mexico or to somewhere else in the world. If you're married, just go to the next city over, right? And spend a weekend together. If you're dating and you feel like the flame's going out, then sit down and talk about it. Why? Because you want this love to be a lifetime.
Right.
If it's going out in the first couple of months that you're dating, imagine when you're married, right? Like there's something always more at the root that you want to tackle first, right? And I would challenge everybody, as cliche as it sounds, be open and communicate with one another, because that solves so many issues.
Everything,
Now, communication, and this can be for another podcast, how to communicate, that's an art in and of itself, right? For my wife specifically, I won't talk for all women, but for my wife, if I tell her, I don't know, if I tell her, hey, can you take out the car, right? And then I say, hey, can you take out the car? It's two completely different things.
Yes,
it's the same phrase. For me, it's the same thing. But for her, it's like completely different. And so how you communicate something is very important. Your body language, your expressions, right? Like that's important. But communication is key. That's, I think, number one. Number two, make sure that God's the center of your relationship. Now, that sounds nice to say. What does that actually look like? Do devotionals together. I always say, right, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's almost impossible to fight with your wife when you've done a devotional. If you just finished doing a devotional, you ain't fighting with your wife or your husband, or, you're not going to fight, right? So I'd say God being the center of your relationship, you can do that by doing devotionals together. You do that for praying for each other. Yes. And finally, you can do that by living your relationship as the Bible indicates. What does the Bible say about relationships? What does it warn against in relationships, right? If you want warnings, go read Samson, like the way that Samson, lived his life. Probably how you should not do relationships, or some of David's, right? If you want to learn how to talk to your wife, read the Song of Songs, right? Songs of Solomon, like that helps, like to learn how to be more romantic and things. So it's in there. It's in there. And it's important that you go into the Bible and together, read. It's super, super important. And the last thing I would say is what Paul tells Timothy, and just to bring it all back full circle. Fan the flame of the gift of God that's been placed inside of you. That means this, you got to do something about it. If you're just praying about your relationship getting better, God, please, like, can you help me, God, please? But you're not doing anything about it, nothing's going to happen. Why? Because God can't fix it? No, because the Word of God says faith without works is dead. Okay? You can have all the faith in the world, but if you put no work behind it, it's that this is, just to put it into perspective, it's equivalent to if I cry out to God every day, oh my God, give me a job, God, give me a job, give me a job. but I never submit a single job application, nothing's going to happen. Like I need to put some action behind my faith. And I think a combination of the two is a very powerful thing. So I would recommend, those things for if you feel like your flame is going out, or you don't feel like it's going out, but you want to be like get ahead of the game and prevent things from happening. I think it's important that you do these specific things. Take time for each other, be open, communicate a lot, put God as the center, of your relationship. And I think if you do that, that's like the key to like success, to a successful life is really that. But both people have to want to do it, right? So, talk to your significant other, see how they feel about things. And if they want to solve it and you want to solve it, then you will solve it, right? Yes. It won't be easy all the time, but you will solve it. This might be for another podcast, but I think also, dealing with or being, one thing is communicating it, but then the other thing is also how to receive communication, how to receive it, because if I could have easily, when you came to me and said, hey, I just feel like things are changing and it's not the same as before. As a man, I could have been like, what? Why do you feel that way? Right? Like, that's not my fault. Like, but instead receive it and be like, okay, she's expressing something to me. I got to listen to this. And I might not agree with it, from my perspective, but obviously, her and I are one, you and I are one. And so I have to figure out some middle ground, right? That's my job and our job together to find a middle ground, to kind of land on. So I think that it's super important. Spend time with one another, do things, that you used to do at the beginning. That's actually the recipe that, as I mentioned earlier in the book of Revelation, right? When God says to this church, you've lost your first love. Yeah. If you keep reading, it says, do the things you used to do at the beginning, right? And I think that's so true. When you first met your person and you were so in love, you would actively plan surprise dates. You would maybe bring flowers. You would, do things here and there. Do those things again. Yeah. That helps to spark the flame, back. But it does take a little bit of work, right? It does take a little bit of work. So, I recommend that you guys try that and, some of those things. And thank you for, giving the advice that you have today. I always love hearing your perspective on things. And so I appreciate you for that. We're closing up, now this month here of relationships. I believe that if God is the center of any relationship, then you can expect to have a successful relationship. Yeah. If you try to do things on your own, they're not always going to work out. Can you do some things on your own? Sure, of course. But to have a successful, long-lasting relationship, I believe firmly that God has to be the center of it, especially if you want to have it be lived in a way that's pleasing before the Lord, right? God must be the center of it, right? And so, we love you guys. I thank y'all that you have tuned in over this, series of relationships. It's been awesome. We're just about done here with relationships. We actually have one more episode that we're going to be talking about. That will be the last one. And then after moving forward, this won't just be a relationships podcast. This will be about leadership and and pastoring and stuff. But we did want to just kick off this first couple episodes tied in with the series that we're doing across our campuses here at Vine Church.
I'm so excited to see where this podcast goes.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for it too. And so, I just want to remind y'all, if you haven't already, make sure that you like the videos. Make sure that you leave comments. We want to read what you guys, are thinking as you're watching this. And remember to subscribe because we're going to be dropping one every single week. And just so that we have some Spanish ones coming up too. Vine Church TV, our goal is for it to be a network. And within that network, think of it like a Netflix, right? Within that app, right, there will be multiple shows or podcasts or channels, whatever you want to call them. Some will be in Spanish because we have also a Spanish congregation. And so we want to make sure that for our leaders and for the congregation, they can be built by some of these conversations that happen. So, stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for joining us on vacation, coming on vacation with us. It was a crazy thing to get all this, podcast gear. You just see two mics, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening behind the scenes for this to happen. So thank you guys for being a part of this journey that is Vine Church TV. Amen. Thank you for listening to us talk. And thank you for joining us on vacation. I love you guys, and I'm praying that the Lord be the center of your relationships and that in Him we make our relationships stronger every single day and every single year. We love you guys. God bless you, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
God bless you.